Chapter 47, The Listening Shadow. Inside the fissure, darkness was not merely the absence of light. It was closeness, pressure, stone breathing far too near the skin. The narrow passage they had entered widened a few yards in, as though the mountain had kept a forgotten hollow there. An irregular vault, low in some places, higher in others, its damp walls returning the elven crystal's glow in muted flashes. The air smelled of ancient earth and wet mineral. Slow droplets fell from a crack in the ceiling, striking the ground with a steady tapping that, in that silence, sounded almost like a clock. The cold was different from the surface. It did not come from wind, it came from the rock. It crept into their boots and climbed their bones with patience, as though it had all the time in the world. Alden breathed slowly so he would not hear himself. Cal sat against the wall, his back only barely resting on the stone. His shirt clung to him with blood. The wound high on his back, the gash the tail had opened, still seeped slowly, darkening the fabric and leaving a dull sheen beneath the crystal's milky light. Each time Cal tried to shift, his breathing broke into a short, sharp hiss. Leanna knelt before him, her satchel open at her side. Her hands moved with silent precision, almost clinical. There was no panic in her gestures, but there was urgency. "Let me see it," she said softly. Cal clenched his teeth. "I am fine." "No," Leanna replied without harshness, not allowing him an escape. "You are holding on out of pride." Sarah stood a few steps back, upright, nearly motionless. She had cleaned her swords and kept them close, as if steel might do something against the stone around them. Her face was as it always was, controlled. Yet her eyes did not leave Cale for more than a heartbeat. Doran crouched with his axe resting on the ground like a staff. Dren remained near the entrance, half turned toward the narrow passage, listening more than watching. Luthera did not lie down. She remained low, yes, but with her neck raised and muzzle aimed toward the darkness beyond the threshold, ready to spring. Outside in the cavern, something struck, a heavy impact that made the stone beneath them vibrate. Then silence. The group tensed as one. No one spoke. Even the dripping seemed louder. Leanna did not lift her head. "If it comes too close, we will know," she murmured, more to remind herself than to soothe the others. She drew out a clean bandage, then another already partly used. She rummaged among small vials, dried leaves, and a bundle of herbs. "Kyle, I am going to remove your clothing," she warned. "Do not you dare make a comment," Cale growled, but his voice came out weaker than he intended. Leanna peeled the soaked cloth away with care. The cut was long, irregular, like something sharp had passed through with violence and by sheer chance had not taken more. The wound reopened with every breath. Leanna swallowed, and for a moment the fatigue showed in her eyes. Then she produced a small bottle wrapped in cloth. The glass was thin. The substance inside was thick, carrying a faint glow, as though it held light even in darkness. Dren glanced at it. "Is that what I think it is?" Leanna nodded without taking her eyes from the wound. "Sap from the fairy tree." Cale tried to push himself up. "Do not waste it." "Do not tell me what to do," Leanna answered. And this time there was an edge in her voice that had not been there before. "If I do not use it, you will bleed out slowly, and we do not have the time, nor the silence, for that." Sarah took a step as if to protest. She stopped halfway. Her jaw tightened. She said nothing. Leanna uncorked the bottle. The scent that escaped was strange, fresh, green, with a metallic undertone. Sap mixed with something older. She soaked a cloth and pressed it to the wound. Kel went rigid. He did not cry out, but the air caught in his chest. His fingers gripped the rock's edge. The liquid reacted when it met blood. It did not flare like a miracle. It did not seal skin as though nothing had happened, but the bleeding slowed at once, as if the body suddenly remembered it had to endure. Leanna kept the pressure firm. "Breathe," she told him. Kyle obeyed begrudgingly, his chest rising and falling with care. Leanna applied a second cloth. Then she added a paste of crushed herbs mixed with something dark and bound it with practiced precision. "It will hurt," she warned, "and you will not move that shoulder the way you want." "Will I keep walking?" Kyle asked. Leanna held his gaze. "You will walk, but if you do not rest for a few hours, It will open again, and next time I will have no margin. She sat back on her heels, and as she stowed the bottle, her hand paused for an instant. And besides, she added more softly, that was my second bottle. Dren lifted a brow. Leanna raised the bottle into the crystal light. The level had dropped. Not much, but enough to be plain. The first I used long ago, she said, on the previous journey. Cale frowned, remembering. When? He murmured and did not finish. Leanna nodded. Now I have only one left. The vault seemed to grow colder. So, she continued, from this moment on, we have to be more careful. Much more. Alden stepped closer. Good, he said, and his voice sounded firmer than he felt within. Kyle rests. The rest of us, think. Dren gave a short laugh without humor. Think. He glanced toward the narrow entrance. About what? About how in the abyss we kill something we cannot see? Something that finds us when we breathe? Alden did not answer at once. He touched the edge of his breastplate where the blow had landed. The groove in Durkin's steel was still there, a deep line, like a scar. I do not know what it was, he admitted, but I do not want to meet it again in open ground. Dren ran a hand through his hair, dust still clinging to his skin. It was not a Krogar, not a Varog. That, he stopped, searching for a word he could not find. That was something else. Doran lifted his eyes slowly. There are stories, he said. His voice was deep but uncertain, as though he were speaking something he would rather not bring into the present. Sarah remained still. Alden noticed that her attention, for the first time since they entered the vault, shifted away from Cale. Only for a second. Only to listen. Stories from the old tunnels, Doran continued, of miners who did not return, of caravans that vanished without a trace. Dren spat to the side. Dwarven tales to frighten children. Sarah spoke then, slowly as if weighing each word. The stories speak of a thing, she said, and in that pause the dripping seemed to stop. That does not see with eyes. That hunts by sound. Alden felt his stomach tighten. Sarah did not raise her voice. She did not seek drama. Her tone was that of someone who would rather be wrong. That does not stop, another pause, until everything is dead. Dren opened his mouth to cut in, but found nothing to say. Sarah swallowed. She seemed to hate every word, as though remembering it were opening a door. They call it Murkhaz. The name sounded wrong against stone, as though it did not belong to living tongues. Dren leaned forward. Fine, he said. Then tell me what those stories say. How do you kill it? There was no answer. Not from Doran, not from Sarah, only the dripping. And far away, another dull odor, closer than before. Alden forced himself to speak. For now, he said, and his words felt small against the mountain. We rest, we regain strength, and when Cale can stand without bleeding out, we move forward with clearer minds. Dren let out a breath, half resignation. And if it does not leave, he asked, tipping his chin toward the entrance. In answer, outside, the tail struck stone again. The sound traveled through the narrow passage and seeped into the vault, making a droplet tremble as it fell and burst upon the ground like a small star of water. Leanna leaned toward Cale and adjusted the bandage one last time. Do not sleep yet, she whispered, not until the pain eases. Cal looked at her with a mixture of frustration and gratitude he did not wish to show. Thank you, he murmured at last, nearly inaudible. Leanna nodded, not allowing the moment to grow. Sarah moved toward the entrance. I will take the first watch, she said. Alden looked at her a moment longer than necessary. He said nothing. He did not ask why, but his gaze was enough to acknowledge what was plain. Sarah was not offering to stand watch out of discipline. She was offering because she did not want to close her eyes while Cale bled. Sarah did not hold his gaze. She merely adjusted her quiver, checked an arrow, and took her place beside the narrow passage, body half turned, ready for whatever breathed outside. The group settled as best they could within the vault. Crystal light trembled over dried blood on stone, and in the darkness beyond the threshold, something continued to strike. Not with fury, with patience, like something that knew that sooner or later, all living things must come out again. Night had covered the camp in a tense stillness. Torches burned with uneven light, shaken by a cold wind that descended from the mountains like a constant breath. Far off, the walls of Cara Dûm cut a dark line against the sky, barely visible through banks of low fog that crept through the valley. The stone giants remained motionless, colossal silhouettes frozen in an eternal gesture of watchfulness. Riven was inside his tent. He wore no black armor. Instead, he was dressed in simple, durable cold-weather clothing, a dark cloak fastened across his shoulders, thick leather gloves. On a low table lit by an oil lamp, there were few items: coiled rope, a canteen, a packet of compact rations, a sheathed dagger. It did not look like a commander's kit. It looked like the kit of someone who did not expect to return. He was tightening the cloak's buckle when the tent flap shifted. "Enter," he said without turning. A young soldier stepped in, little more than 20, tall, broad-shouldered, with a strength earned more by work than by ornament. His face still held youth, but his posture was firm. He had learned to carry the weight of war without displaying it. He removed his helmet with respect and held it at his side. "My lord," he said, "the order awaits your commands." Riven finished tying the rope before he turned. "Good." The soldier hesitated, and then he noticed the packed bag, the absence of armor, the few objects laid out with economy. He understood before he asked. "You are preparing to depart?" he said carefully. "Yes." The answer was simple. "Shall I inform the order to make ready?" Riven shook his head. "No." Silence thickened. "Going with me would only get in the way," Riven added. "This is not a mission for many." The soldier drew a deep breath. "Then, what must we do?" Riven regarded him more closely, not as a commander, but as one examining a memory. He had seen him before, twice clearly. The first time, the day he was told of Gar's death. The young man had arrived covered in dust and other men's blood, without flourish or drama. He delivered the message in a steady voice, meeting Riven's eyes even as the news fell like a slab of stone. He did not seek comfort. He offered no excuse. The second time, after the avalanche in the mountains, when the main route was buried and the scouts hesitated, he had been the one to point out the secondary ravine. Longer and more dangerous, but passable. He did not insist. He did not argue. He named the risk and waited for the order. Riven remembered thinking then that the boy understood something essential, that choosing is also carrying what comes afterward. "Your name?" Riven asked. The soldier blinked, surprised. "Myranthel, my lord?" Riven nodded slowly. "Myranthel. Unless you receive direct orders from Lord Galathor," Riven continued, "or from me by any means, the order will remain in this camp." Myranthel opened his mouth to answer, but Riven had not finished. "Until then, you will be in command." The young man went still. "Me!" It was not disbelief. It was the sudden weight of responsibility. Riven stepped toward him. "You," he said, "because you do not hesitate when you are ordered, and because you are not afraid to fail." Myranthel swallowed. He straightened his back. "I will do what I can," he said. "I will not disappoint you." "I know." Riven took the bag and slung it over his shoulder. He pushed aside the tent flap and stepped out. The night air struck him at once. The fog had thickened, moving in slow white tongues between the tents. Far off, muted voices carried, an occasional clash of metal, a distant shout from the outer settlement. From the walls, a deep sound echoed once, the far-off grind of stone against stone as one of the giants adjusted its millennia-old stance. Riven did not look back. He walked toward the path that climbed toward the walls, vanishing into the fog. Within a few steps, his silhouette blurred, as though the night swallowed him with patience. Each step took him farther from the camp, from the order, from Ralum, and closer to something that had no easy name. The wind carried one last sound down from the mountain. Not a roar, not a cry, a heavy, distant lash, as though the stone itself remembered that no one walks toward the abyss unscathed, and no one leaves their shadow behind. Riven went on alone, because some paths are not meant to be walked with company.